people with disability through financial literacy workshops, and he collaborates with several NGOs to conduct workshops and brings together young and bright minds. We are very privileged to have you with us today, sir. The floor is yielded to you.
Thank you so much, Sanchi. Thank you so much, all of you present here for this program virtually. um, as we will be talking about the opportunities in the capital market and securities laws. I know it's not this topic is not really a very known topic for many of us, including myself, till the time I joined SEBI. Um, uh, it could be a completely different school of practice, right? So even I didn't know that, and in fact, I have heard recently some of the law colleges have started to have this topic, this subject, as securities laws, but I'm not sure about my college, the Government Law College, whether we have it still or not. Having said that, today we will be talking about what is SEBI, what are the different laws that SEBI is governing, who are the entities which are being governed by SEBI. Apart from that, we will be also talking about certain things about the financial markets, including the equity market, debt market, commodities market, and so on and so forth. Before we start, there's something that I want to share with all of you. First of all, I really want to thank you for being here on this Sunday morning. It's not so easy to kind of come on online on time and do this, especially on the Sunday morning. You could have done many things. You could actually watch a movie or do something else, or maybe just sleep till late. But the fact that you're present here shows that you're really committed to know more about this topic, and you're committed that you want to contribute for yourself and your life through this session today, right? So let's begin. Okay, so let's talk about today's topic today. SEBI has been about 30 years old organization ever since the SEBI has become an autonomous body, right? So we have about 30 years history of SEBI presently. However, this securities market is a very old phenomenon. It's about more than 200 years back, the security market investment has started. Now, why it is useful? At that time, why it was found to be useful is because that time, in the initial days, cotton was one of the commodities which were sold and bought by different people across the world. Now, some people realized that carrying cotton from one place to other and then actually taking it from that place to another place, it is a very tedious job, right? And then they realized that we could do something about it. And then some people came together and started to trade in cotton through the paper. Now, how's that? That is through the that time they were not called as securities, but they actually made a paper stating that, okay, this 1 ton worth of this paper is worth 1 ton of the cotton, and then there was a cost attached to that, and people started to buy and sell those papers, and that is how the securities market, this market started. Now, before we take this even further, let's first understand what is the market. So now the market is very simple. Now, the market is a place where there are more than one buyer and more than one seller, right? So whenever we go in the market, there's a market we go, there are different kinds of sellers and different kinds of buyers at one place, and then they negotiate, they talk, and then they uh, we pay the money, and then we get the uh, whatever that goods that we want to buy or services that we want to buy. So that's market. Now, what is securities market then? So securities market is the place where the securities, that is, we will talk about what is securities, but then where the securities are bought and sold, right? Now, what is security? Now, securities is, as has been defined under the Securities Contract Regulation Act, it actually lists down so many things, but right now I don't want to go into the real technicalities of it. Basically, it includes shares, debentures, bonds, mutual funds, or any other marketable security that is being declared as securities by the central government. So this is about the securities. Now let's understand then what is really the securities market, right? So securities market is nowadays, it's just an online platform. For ease of understanding, I would say this is a online platform where we buy and sell the securities. Now, earlier it was very difficult to actually say what is, to really give an analogy to what is the online market or what is the securities market. But now it is so easy, because nowadays we see Flipkarts and Amazons and stuff like that day in and day out. So now we therefore know what is the security market. It's like a Amazon or a Flipkart of the where the securities are bought and sold. So we spoke about the securities market. What is the market? What is securities? And what is the securities market? So going back to the history of securities market, in India, we've actually started this around 150 years back, where the Bombay Stock Exchange came into existence. Now, that time it was not called Bombay Stock Exchange. It was an association of people who were trading in the market. So that time there were people who were buying and selling in the market securities, and at the same time they were running the management of this market also. Now we'll come to that later, how now it has changed, but this was how it was. And till recently, till about 25 years back, we had an outcry system. Now, what is outcry? Basically, in the market, in the stock market, at Dalal Street in Mumbai, there used to be people shouting, okay, like for example, Reliance Sauka, 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 things like that. And then people would buy. Whoever wants to buy, people would bid. So it was, people used to keep shouting, keep discovering the price for the securities. Over the period of time, that of course has changed, and now we've moved to the electronic system, which is much more efficient and much more easy to actually deal with. Earlier, of course, not many people were investing in the securities market. There's a very small chunk of people who are investing in the securities market. Now, although we can see that there's hardly 1.5% people in India who are still investing in the market, but still the percentage has grown multifold now. And of course, it has become easier, of course, to kind of invest in the securities market nowadays. Okay, so of course, the Bombay Stock Exchange was recognized in 1927. Now, we talked a bit about the Bombay Stock Exchange and the history of the securities market in India. Now, let's understand why SEBI was established. There is a turning point. There was a turning point in Indian history in terms of its economic growth, and that was in 1991, where the liberalization has happened. Of course, the liberalization did not happen because we wanted really to open our economies, but that was in India, we had no choice. Because at that time, we were in such a grave economic dire situation where we actually had to pledge our gold, which was kept with the government, with the Bank of England. So the situation was so bad that probably all our money in India, basically all the money that was kept with the government, could have become worthless. And that was the time when all of us in India got together, even the political establishment got together, got their act together, and they decided to open the economy. Before that, what was happening? Before that, in India, we had a, as they call it, they used to call it with a kind of sarcastically, they used to call it called Hindu rate of growth of economy. Now, what is that? That is like a maximum of 3% of growth in economy. And we were happy with that. However, after 1991, the whole situation has changed, and we've actually reached even over 8% of the growth in the economy year on year. So that is one part of it. And of course, there had been many changes that has come in the Indian securities market, and otherwise also in the entire economy of India, right? So of course, the need was felt even before. The need was felt in even long before the SEBI was established, right? So actually, SEBI was established in 1988 as with an executive order. It did not have any independence as such. It was just a body which was constituted under an executive order. Now, before that, what was the case? Before that, there was an office in Ministry of Finance in New Delhi called Controller of Capital Issue. Now, what is the Controller of Capital Issue? There was this office where this guy used to sit, and all those Ambanis and Birlas and Tatas, all of those big people at that time would queue up outside that room if somebody wants to maybe raise capital from the market or do something with their company, grow their companies and stuff like that, because we were in the license Raj. Now, what happened after that? Let's actually understand it through an analogy. If I want to sell this table, I know the price of my table, right? I want to sell it for, say, about 1,000 rupees. Now, I want to sell it for 1,000 rupees. And how if you come and say, okay, no, you can't sell it for 1,000 rupees, you have to sell it for 2,000 rupees only. But I said, no, I am happy with 1,000. No. But you said, no. Sell it for 2,000 rupees. But, so would you like it? Would I like it? No. Because I know the cost of my capital. I mean, I know how much am I worth of. Or on the contrary, if somebody says, if I say, okay, somebody's asking this table for 1,000 rupees, and you say, no, sell it for only 500 rupees, because that is the real value of your table. So unfortunately, that was the issue at that time, while we were governed by the controller of capital issues. And that was the issue. I mean, there were many such issues like that. There were issues like, I want to sell my share in the market, and the check is bounced, and I couldn't do anything. My security is gone. My share is gone, and I don't know who's the person. And now my securities is totally gone. I can't do anything. Similarly, there were occasions where deliberately people actually kind of put a wrong signature on the check. And by the time the check was presented in the bank, the check bounced. Or even while selling the securities, selling the shares, there is to be deliberate wrong signature. There are lots of issues like that. Right, so the government of India realized that we've got to do something about it, and in 1988 started with they've established SEBI. Now in 1992, SEBI Act came into existence. Now, on the 12th of April 1992, SEBI Act came into force, and SEBI Act's anniversary of 30th anniversary is just around the corner next week. So in April 1992, SEBI Act was SEBI was established, and SEBI Act was implemented by the government of India. Now that was not enough. Why? Because the securities that were traded, the shares in different forms, whether it is shares or some other securities which were traded in the market, were very, very were actually governed by Securities Contract Regulation Act, which is an old act, and that had to be amended. So in 90s only we started to amend the Securities Contract Regulation Act. Right. In 1996, we came up with an act called Depositories Act 1996, through which we've actually made an arrangement for depositories of shares. So we'll talk about what is depositories and what is dematerialization in a later part of our session today. And of course, the Companies Act was amended. At that time, Companies Act 1956 was there, so that was amended. Make it at par with the new realities of the market. So now, so SEBI was established. Now let's actually understand what is SEBI. So SEBI was essentially established, as I said, to regulate the securities market. Because that time, of course, SEBI was not the only thing which was established. Of course, SEBI was one of the first. But in 1990s, that decade, many specialized bodies were established. Now, earlier, everything was taken care of by the government. And in 1990s, there were many bodies were established, like SEBI was established. Then there were some other bodies were established, like IRDA, Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority. Then the TRAI, that is the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, was established. There were many such authorities were established, and the idea behind all of that was to have that the specialized people should govern the specialized sectors, right? It is easy to kind of take decisions when you have specialized people taking decisions. It is faster. And the fact that SEBI has grown leaps and bounds in the last 30 years is a testimony of that. That the specialized knowledge, specialized focus had really worked in the favor of securities market, of securities market, and this is in favor of establishment of the SEBI. Right. So SEBI, of course, has its head office in Mumbai. Then it has its regional offices in Kolkata, Delhi, in Chennai, right, and in Ahmedabad. And of course, we have some local offices also, small local offices in certain capitals of different states, whether Jaipur or Shimla, Chandigarh, Bhubaneswar, Bangalore, Hyderabad, so those places. So now let's look at the preamble of SEBI Act. So the preamble of SEBI Act is very, very important, I would say. Now the preamble of SEBI Act says, it is on your screen, you can read that, but the thing is, it has essentially three things. One, regulation of capital markets, securities markets. Two, development of securities market. And the third is the investor protection. Now let's understand this in a little more detail. Now, if you see it on the face of it, development of securities market and regulation of securities market are the two contrary looking statements. If I have to develop something, I have to give you an option to, okay, you can, I should be liberal about with you, right? If I have to regulate something, then I will have to kind of say, oh, no, you can't do this. You can only do this much and stuff like that. So when you say these are the two contradictory things, contradictory objectives that the SEBI Act has given SEBI, it is on the face of it, it looks like, oh no, this is a difficult job. And of course, this has been a difficult job for SEBI to really balance that out. But understand it with an analogy here. In our car, we have brakes and accelerator. Now we can run the car with a 100 speed also, just because we know that we have brakes with us. At any time, if you think that you may collide, you can actually stop the car. You can apply the brakes. And this has been a case with SEBI. Since we could actually develop the market, and we also had the authority to regulate the market. So, SEBI knew that even if we at some point we find that this market is not working properly, there's some issue there, we can always regulate it. And that is why SEBI, I think, has really grown very, very fast. So we talked about the regulation of market and the development of securities market. And now the third part, very, very important, is the investor protection. Now, no matter how much efficient markets you have, how much developed markets you have, how much regulations you have in the market, but what happens if the investors are not protected? Because the essential part of this whole thing is regulation, is the protection of investors. If investors don't feel safe, then everything is just of no use, right? So therefore there are these points in the preamble given, which is extremely important, right? So we talked about the preamble of securities market. Now let's understand what are the different entities that are governed by SEBI, that are regulated by SEBI. So let's understand it. In our earlier analogy, we've said that okay, we want to we have a securities market where we buy. There is a buyer and there is a seller. Now you are a buyer, and there either the company is selling or somebody else, some other person is selling. So one is an investor and one is an issuer. Okay, in the securities market. Between these two people, the company and investor, between these two, there is a whole range of people, whole range of entities who ensure the market run efficiently. The securities market runs efficiently. And those are called intermediaries, right? Those are called intermediaries. Now, what do the intermediaries do? They have a defined role, to play in the market, in the trading of the market, in the securities market. Now, who could be those? So the important one is, of course, is stock exchange, where the stock exchange provides you with a platform on which you could transact, right? What does it do? It matches the price, buyer's price and seller's price. Now, if I say I want to sell a Reliance ka share for 100 rupees, you say no, I want it for 99 rupees. Now there could be n number of buyers and sellers at the same time in the market, and they're all anonymous. Nobody knows who's the buyer and seller, right? To really match the buyers and sellers price, the lowest price, it actually matches it this way. The highest price that has been quoted by the buyer and the lowest price that has been quoted by the seller, it matches, because there are thousands and lakhs of people at the same time in the market. You got, so the price matches. And once the price is matched, you can, the trade gets executed in the market. So therefore, it's an anonymous mechanism where nobody knows who is buying my share. I don't know who's buying my share, but I know I'm getting the price of what I wanted. Similarly, the seller doesn't know whether he's selling it to me or to somebody else. So when that actually happens, that happens on the stock on the stock exchange, right? Then there are, now you and me don't know each other. How do I know when I am buying the share? How do I know that I will get my share, and how do you know that you will get the money? So for that, there are some other entities which are called clearing corporations. What they do? There is a concept of novation in our in law, which is like standing in somebody's shoes. Now, I don't know you, you don't know me. Now, what does this clearing corporation do? They basically step in each other's shoes, in our shoes. What the clearing corporation will do, it will take my share from my hand, to their account first. Once they are sure that, okay, they've got the shares, also at the same time, they will get the money from you, right? When they are sure that, okay, they've got the money, then they will share, they will transfer the money to the seller, and shares to the buyer of the securities. That is how they do it. And this is an important market participant who basically they are called intermediaries. They are called MIIs, right? They are intermediaries in the market infrastructure intermediaries. There, right? So there is a clearing corporation. Then there are similarly there are brokers. What do they do? You all know we sell and buy, put our orders to the brokers. So those are the brokers. Then there are sub brokers, and there are different kinds of entities also. In India, of course, we have National Stock Exchange, which is the biggest exchange, one of the biggest exchange across the world. The National Stock Exchange came into existence on the plank of the technology driven, the technology was there, USP. Similarly, BSE was there. BSE was a historically important exchange. Of course, we had about more than 150 years ka history behind the Bombay Stock Exchange. There were actually some other stock exchanges, also regional stock exchanges. Like that time, the prominent were the Delhi Stock Exchange. Then there are Kolkata Stock Exchange. There was Rajkot, there was Saurashtra Stock Exchange, Pune Stock Exchange, so Jaipur Stock Exchange, so on and so forth. Now, now there are we don't have those stock exchanges. They are either they've become a part of the one of the nationalized national stock exchanges, whether NSE or BSE, or they have just closed down their operations. Right. So there was this BSE and NSE, right? Or there is there have been nowadays commodity exchanges also we have. Right. So these are all intermediaries and exchanges. Now there is an important intermediary called mutual fund. Mutual fund is what? I don't have lakhs and lakhs of rupees in my account to start investing in the market. But people, like if there are 1 lakh people wanting to invest 500 rupees each, the amount become extremely big, right? So if 1 lakh people want to kind of put their money in the market, even 500 rupees will become 5 crore. Now, what mutual fund company do? They collect money from people like us, the small investors, small or big, and on our behalf, they invest in the securities market, in the stock market or a bond market or whatever. They invest in the market, and then whatever the money has grown, if there's a growth in the investment, they will share the growth with us. And for doing so, they will charge a small fees from the investment that we have put with them, kept with them, right? So that's the mechanism of mutual fund. How it is useful for us? It is useful for us in many ways. We can actually diversify the investment. Now, what is diversification? Diversification is like, I'll come to that, but diversification is actually, as they say in economics, don't keep all your eggs in the same basket, right? So if we keep our investment in one share only, there may be a problem. If that share goes down, all your investment could be wiped out. But here we get to invest in different shares with a small ticket size, small amount of investment that we have. Now that's one. Number two is that all of us don't know what's happening in the stock market. Whether I should keep investing, whether I should stay invested, whether I should sell my investment, and so on and so forth. I don't know what should I do. Here with the mutual fund, there are these experts in the market who could take care of your investment, and you could take care of your life's other issues, right? So there are many those advantages that we have about in mutual funds, but these are some of those. And therefore, mutual fund plays a very significant role in our lives these days. And even in COVID days, you must have heard that the AUM, the assets under management of the mutual funds, have grown manyfold. Why? Because people find it easy to invest in the mutual funds for different reasons that I've just told you. And otherwise, also there are some many other advantages that we have in the mutual funds. Right. So mutual fund is another intermediary that we have, which is governed by SEBI. Then there are merchant bankers. Who are the merchant bankers? Merchant bankers are those who sort of takes care of the different requirements if somebody wants to come up with an IPO. Now you must have heard about IPO. What is IPO? We'll come to that. But for the companies to issue their shares in the market, they are the advisors for those companies. What should be the price, whether the issue will be subscribed, even whether people will invest, not invest, do all the due diligence and stuff like that. That all of that is taken care of the merchant bankers. Then there are underwriters. What is underwriters? Underwriters are those people who kind of ensure. Now, for example, if I say, okay, I have to raise 500 crores from the market, but I'm not sure whether people will buy my shares or not. What the underwriter would do, underwriter would say, okay, let's see, if people don't buy your shares, I will buy whatever is the unsold share that may remain in the market. So it's like an insurance for selling of my shares. So those are the underwriters. Then there are portfolio managers. Now, who are the portfolio managers? Now, similarly, mutual funds, similar to mutual funds, what mutual fund do? They take money from us, from a retail investor, small people. But portfolio managers, what they do, they have investors who are big investors. Like if somebody wants to keep maybe 1 crore, invest 1 crore. So how to manage that? How to where to invest, how to invest, and stuff like that is taken care by the portfolio managers. Then, of course, we have talked about stockbrokers and sub-brokers. Now, depositories. Who are the depositories? Let's understand this. Now, depositories are those who, okay, let's understand it this way. Nowadays, we have Paytm wallet and MobiKwik wallet and different wallets we have, right? So we have those wallets where we keep the money. So now the depositories is the wallet where you can keep the shares and debentures, basically different securities. You can keep the shares or the debentures in the electronic form. It's an electronic bag for you, right? Which has been taken care, the infrastructure and everything is taken care of by the depositories. They have the share deposited with them, which is for you, they just keep hold it in trust. They just hold it on our behalf. Right? So those are the depositories. Then there are debenture trustees. Who are the debenture trustees? So now they are like, for example, I am a big bank. I have given you a loan of say 5,000 crore. Now, I cannot manage all my bonds and debentures and stuff, whatever I may have. I have given it to a company. What do? I would keep all of that with a debenture trustee or a custodian. Custodian, who is that custodian? The mutual funds, when we buy mutual funds, mutual fund companies stocks also are, I mean, whatever the mutual fund company buys for us, they keep it with the custodians, right? So custodian is also one of the other entities that is being covered by. There are share transfer agents who actually ensure that the shares are transferred to proper people when there is a new issue of shares and stuff. And the registrar to issue is a one who while having a new shares, when a company issues a new shares, they kind of ensure again the records are kept properly, and whom to buy, whom to refund, whom to transfer shares and stuff like that. So they do. Similarly, there's a foreign institutional investor. Nowadays, it is called foreign portfolio investors, right? And custodians we have talked about. Venture capital fund. Who is venture capital fund? Now, venture capital fund is the one now. You are a startup, and I come to you and say, okay, you have a great idea. I would invest 1 crore rupees in your company, but for that you have to give me a share of your company, maybe ownership of your company to the extent of 50%. And when somebody does it in the initial stages of the company, where there is basically we don't know the money, there's a high risk of my money, right? The money can even go, all the money could be actually wasted. Or actually I could get a multi-bagger returns. I could get maybe 10 times of the returns that I'm putting, the money that I'm putting. So these are called there are these separate funds who are very, very risky, and there are many funds like that. Those are called venture capital funds. Asset managed company is a part of mutual funds who manage assets on our behalf, right? Credit rating agencies. Now there are many occasions where companies want to issue shares, to issue shares or to issue bonds in the market. And for them, whether they are credit worthy, how is their credit and stuff, like all of that is rated by an entity called credit rating agency. So they would give you a ranking, credit ranking. So in India, we have credit rating agencies like CRISIL, CARE. So there are, I think, 5 such companies who do work of credit rating. So they could actually rate your credit worthiness on your quantitative, on your looking at your numbers, your balance sheet, and your profit and loss. At the same time, some qualitative factors also, including like how's the management of that company, whether there are any legal battles pending and stuff like that. So those credit rating agencies give you a credit, would assign you a ranking in terms of your credit worthiness, right? So that is credit rating agencies. Investment advisors are the people who would come to us and say, okay, I am an expert. I could advise you where to invest, how to invest, how much to invest. So those are the people who would do that. So we've talked about the various intermediaries that we have are governed by SEBI. Now let's look at what are the various acts which are governed by SEBI. I actually mentioned that in earlier part of my session today, and that is essentially there are 4 acts. The first act from where SEBI derives all its powers and all its duties is, of course, SEBI Act. We talked about that. Then there is a Depositories Act 1996. What does it do? It actually establishes the governance of depositories. Depositories I spoke about just a while back. where we talked about a kind of a wallet, electronic wallet, where you can keep all your shares and different securities that you have. Then we have Securities Contract Regulation Act 1957. That is this is a very old act, but this is also a very important act where this act says what is securities essentially, and what features it should have, how marketable they should be, right? So all of that is taken care of by the Securities Contract Regulation Act. Then there are certain provisions of Companies Act 2013 now. Earlier, of course, it was 1956. Now it is 2013, where it talks about, where it governs, has impact in terms of governing the securities market, right? So these are the acts which are governed by SEBI. Now let's go to the next topic, and let's understand who SEBI, how the SEBI is established. What is the constitution of SEBI? So of course, SEBI has been is headed by the chairman and its board. Now, what is board? Board is board is constituted by some whole-time and part-time members. Now, there are some whole-time members. Presently, there are 4 whole-time members that SEBI has. Now, of course, these chairman and whole-time members and all the members constitute a board, where all the important policy decisions, all the important decisions are being taken by the board. RBI also nominates 1 member on the SEBI board, and of course the central government, the Ministry of Finance, appoints its members on the SEBI board. So it contains so it is so there is a chairman, then there's a whole-time member, and there are some other members who are not necessarily whole-time members, and then below that there are executive directors. Now, executive directors are generally they take care of certain functions of SEBI. So, say for example, investigation and surveillance is headed by one executive director. Similarly, investment management department is headed by another. Similarly, the legal department, of course, and the adjudication department is headed by another. So things like that. So there are a set of departments which are headed by those executive directors, and below them there are head of the departments which are of the chief general manager level, and then there are general managers and deputy general manager, and so on and so forth. So that's the overall structure of SEBI, right? The reason why the SEBI Act, SEBI was established was, of course, that we wanted specialized people to take care of the securities market, and therefore SEBI has always endeavored to have specialized set of people working with them, whether they are legal officers, whether there are other officers, different operational departments. So they always are manned by different professions, right? Now, of course, there is a SEBI. As I said, SEBI board is an independent body. SEBI is an autonomous body which derives its power from SEBI Act and other acts. But still, there's a provision in the SEBI Act where in case of if the government feels that SEBI is not working properly, they can supersede the Minister of the central government can actually supersede SEBI, and it can then uh, take charge of the entire SEBI, and the Ministry of Finance would run the whole SEBI, entire SEBI. So that provision is also there, just in case the government feels that SEBI is not really doing justice to its work. Now let's talk about powers of SEBI. Of course, SEBI has different powers. Now, SEBI's powers could include powers like banning somebody from entering in the securities market, right? Or suspending somebody, some companies, some intermediaries, as I said, whether it's a stock exchange, whoever it is. So SEBI has that power to ban or restrict their participation in the market. That's one. SEBI, of course, can ask somebody to deposit the ill-gotten gains. If somebody has made profits through some action which is beyond the outside the laws and regulation, the acts and regulations governed by SEBI, it can actually direct somebody to just deposit all their gains with SEBI, right? They can also direct somebody to refund the money to the investors. And of course, SEBI can SEBI can adjudicate on the issues. They can actually pass an order against an entity and impose penalty, right? SEBI also has powers to recover money from somebody. They have recovery powers also. Recently, after 2014, SEBI has the powers to recover money from the entities that have done any have got any ill-gotten profits through an illegal act. So all these powers SEBI has, and of course it can directs different intermediaries, different companies that it governs to do or to not to do a certain acts through its rules, regulations. There are different guidelines, circulars. In fact, to put this in a perspective, SEBI has in last about 28, 29 years has issued about 2,200 circulars alone, those circulars. Then of course these acts are there. Apart from that, SEBI has regulations about, I think about 44 regulations SEBI has, to take care of different topics, different parts of the market, right? So that's another the SEBI has. And of course it issues guidelines from time to time and so on and so forth. To let you know an interesting thing here, while we are doing our law, we have always heard the Constitution of India always talks about the separation of powers. We say that, okay, the executive, judicial, and legislative power should be separate. But SEBI is one of the probably a very rare entity which has got all those three powers. Now it legislates because it makes rules and regulations and issues circulars. Similarly, it does executive work, the work of executive, like it directs different entities to do or not to do a particular thing. And of course, it does the adjudication, recovery, those activities. Through that, they perform quasi-judicial functions. Of course, there are safeguards, but just a interesting thing that I thought I'll just let you know. So all these three things are being done by SEBI at once. Um, Now just let's quickly go over to a certain case studies. Um, we must have all heard about Harshad Mehta scam. And I think recently, I think earlier also, now also on, I think Amazon Prime, there is a series on Harshad Mehta scam, how he did the scam. So I don't want to, considering the time that we haven't had, I don't want to go too much into details of that. But Harshad Mehta scam was a scam which is more than a stock market scam. It was more like a banking scam, I would say. How? Because earlier, uh, even the RBI could issue a check. After this scam, RBI, stopped issuing checks to the third parties. Now only it can issue checks for on the bank's name, nobody else. Earlier, they could do that in certain cases. And what Harshad Mehta did, he actually took a guarantee. He took those checks in the industry to different people and said, "See, I've got a guarantee from this thing. I have money, so you so you put money in your in this security, and people have put the money. Now, what happened in that? People have put all their money, and the share market crashed. How did it crash? You can, of course, go to, because it's an interesting story. You could actually someday, if you haven't watched the series, you could probably go on Google and look at the entire case study. It's an interesting story, right? Uh, Earlier, there used to be people who could come up with the trucks and trucks load of securities, the stock share certificates. And it used to be a very, very inefficient process through which one could buy and sell shares. There were hundreds of people who could just sit at a place and then they would just count the papers of shares. So that has come to an end now, of course, but that was the whole issue. And this was a very initial part of SEBI, and SEBI actually was faced by this, and successfully we've done that. And from that level to about 1,000 points in the market, now we've crossed 50,000 market, the share market in the Sensex, stock market Sensex. So we have grown, we have came much ahead from that scam's effects. So you could, I don't have a problem. You could actually have this PPT with you. You can share the PPT, and you can then maybe refer to this PPT also later on if you want. Okay. Now, Ketan Parikh's scam in 2002, what happened? That was again a similar scam. So this is a self-explanatory one. I don't want to spend time on that. We go to the IPO scam. Now, IPO scam, what happened? In those days, there was a dot-com boom. So any company would actually come and say, okay, I have a so and so abc.com or what.com. No matter what industry are you in, but everybody would give their the name of their company to something.com, and therefore it is called dot-com boom. And people have started, but the companies have started to come up with IPOs, initial public offers. They actually started to raise money from the capital market. People started to invest, and then it busted. Now, what happened in the IPO scam there? There were some people who would actually make fictitious accounts on different names. In fact, to the extent that they could actually go on those uh, what is that matrimonial websites, and they could actually take the names and the photographs of those people, edit them, and you know open accounts on some fictitious names, and corner all the shares with them. So that was a whole idea behind it. And even now the matter is on. I mean, of course, it went till Supreme Court, and now I'm not sure exactly what is the situation now. But SEBI has successfully busted that scam, and now again we are entangled, and again, I mean, the legal process is not entirely over. So that was about the IPO scam. Now let's quickly go over to the milestones that SEBI has achieved over these last 30 years. Of course, there are many more milestones that SEBI has achieved, but the first and a very important of them includes the uh, dematerialization of securities. What is dematerialization? Dematerialization is like keeping your money in the bank account, keeping your shares with the depository, as we spoke about, in that wallet, in that bank account. Where now, if you go to a bank and if you deposit 100 rupees ka 5 notes, will you get the same notes after after 2 days if you go and so, no, I want 500 rupees, you'll get the 500 rupees, all right, but you will not get the same notes, right? So this is called a fungibility of notes, and this is called a fungibility of securities in this context. So the value remains the same, but you may not necessarily get the same share, and this is called a dematerialization. What happens in the dematerialization? Earlier, we have all the share certificates of all shares. Now, earlier, what used to happen? You have a share certificate. Now, if you have 1,000 shares, you will have to keep 1,000 papers with you, or maybe 10 paper, 100 papers with you, depending on what denomination is one's certificate is of. Now, all of that is totally gone. We can actually, it's all became online. You can trade and trade, buy, sell, do whatever through the online mode. Of course, now there'll be some people who would say, "Arey nahi, I want it on my Lakshmi Puja, Diwali ke time pe I want to keep it in front of my in front of God. So I want to keep it there in the puja, my puja." In that case, what happens? So there is an option of rematerialization. What is that? So basically, you can ask the depository, request the depository to make that electronically held security, that share, into a physically held in a paper form, in a share certificate form. However, the usage of that is very limited. Now, because you cannot trade, you cannot do anything about it. You just have to keep it. So nowadays, I don't think anybody is really doing it, but that option was available, right? So that is a dematerialization. Across the world, in different places, there was a concept at that time. It is called, and even now in some cases we have, it's called immobilization of securities. Now, what is immobilization? Immobilization, we, in a big vaults, they keep the share certificates. Now, for example, they will, if a company says, okay, I want 1 crore shares, I am issuing. So the company would make one big certificate, not big necessarily, but one certificate, keep it in with this company, this custodian's vault, and then the custodian would issue maybe 1 crore securities, 1 crore shares of that. So even we had, in India, we had thought about it, but then we decided to go with the dematerialization. And dematerialization in the long run has proved to be a better choice, because now, considering what we have now, the wallets and all these technology, similar technology, we could actually now sense that this is a far better choice that we have made, right? So we talked about the dematerialization of shares. Um, Introduction of rolling settlement system. What is rolling settlement? So earlier there was a batch settlement. So if I buy a share and I want to get my share certificate, get my share and give my money. In that case, earlier, I had to wait as much as 14 days to get my share or to get my money. And in those days, in those 14 days, many things could change, right? So there was a 14-day settlement cycle. What used to happen if I say, for example, on 14th and 28th of a month, the settlement is happening. What I will do, if I want to buy a share on 1st of April, I will have to wait till 14th of April to get my share. Similarly, if somebody has to buy a share on 13th, he will get it on 14th. But there was a disparity. There could be a huge changes in the market in those 14 days, right? So then SEBI introduced a system called rolling settlement. Now, what is rolling settlement? Rolling settlement is where we, every day is a settlement cycle. Now, today I have traded, I have bought the share, so I have to give my money and get my shares. Sorry, I bought the share, so I have to get the share and give my money, right? So every trading day, whenever there's a trading happening in the market, is a fresh settlement cycle. And about in T+1, that is called trading day plus 1 day or trading day plus 2 days, I will get my share and you will get your money in your account. So that is called a rolling settlement. Every day is a settlement cycle. Now, this may not be even, we may not be even realizing it, but earlier this was a huge issue that people had faced in trading in the stocks. Earlier there was so let's talk about the debt securities, trading in the debt securities. Earlier there was no provision of trading in the debt securities. You could actually buy stock, the debentures or bonds, but this you had to keep it till its maturity and get your money from the market, from the issuer of the debt certificate of the bond, right? Now you don't have to keep, hold it forever with you. You can always have it, you can sell it or even buy it from the market. Although in India, even now, we don't have the debt market, very, very efficient market or very deep, we don't have it. But we are working towards it, and now I think very soon we will have a vibrant, this bond market in India. So that's about the debt market. Earlier, as I said, we had to actually the controller of capital issue used to tell, okay, this should be the prize money, this should be your prize, this should be the quantity that you should issue. So there was always a limitation in issuing the shares. But now that issue has also been taken care of. Now actually you can issue share in any denomination, right? Whether it's 1 rupee, 5 rupee, 10 rupee, no problem. Or even if you have issued a share in 10 rupee denomination, you could actually split it into 5 rupees denomination or 2 rupees denomination or 1 rupee denomination also. That is called a share split, right? Or consolidate also. If you have a 10 rupees ka share, and if you want to make it the face value of that share, you want to make it 100 rupees, you can consolidate and make it that. So that is now possible. Um, Earlier, there was a minimum lot size. What is minimum lot? Earlier, there used to be, you had to actually put your money in a, rather put your buy your shares in a lot size. How? Like for example, 100 shares. You couldn't buy less than 100 shares. If you want to buy one share, you couldn't do that in many cases. So there was a issue. There was a problem with that. Now, if somebody had say 90 shares, and if the lot size is 100, this would be called as odd lot. In that case, there was always an issue while sharing. There was a problem in selling that share because you wouldn't get a good price of that. Now, since everything is dematerialized, one share you can always buy one share, sell one share, do whatever you want. So that is become possible, right? So you can buy one share. Of course, the operational efficiency has enhanced. As I said, for example, the trading cycle has become has become a proper. They have made a proper guidelines for that. Similarly, in the issuance of IPO, initial public offering, there's a whole mechanism that has been prescribed, and that is actually very efficiently happening. Then, of course, there is a method that has been prescribed by SEBI. It's called ASBA, ASBA, application supported by application supported by blocked amount. So what happens earlier? There used to be issue where people would give the check to buy a share in the market, right? And when I'm buying the share in the market, I have to give you a check. Now, whether I get the check, whether I get the shares or not, or I applied for 1 lakh rupees and I got it for 50,000 rupees, say for example. Even in that case, to get the refund of my remaining money would take a lot of time. Would take a lot of time, sometimes even months, right? And the company would utilize my funds for so many number of days and so on and so forth. And then checks used to be lost in the transit and all of that. Those issues, problems were there. Now, with this ASBA technique, as I said, system, what they do, you don't have to, pay your money to anybody. You just have to block your money. You just have to authorize your bank to block this X amount. The money remains with you, but you cannot utilize that money till the time the issue is complete. Right? The shares are not allowed. Now, whatever the remaining amount, is, it will be released as soon as the process is over. So your money doesn't go anywhere. So these are the operational efficiency. This was an example of operational efficiency. Right? So as we said, that streamlining the procedure of issue, that we have covered already. SEBI, of course, as earlier it was very difficult to do the investigation on different market scams, but with the help of technology and streamlining and different proprietary softwares that SEBI uses, the number of investigation completion is increasing around, right? Then, of course, we have started with the trading of derivatives, tradings in the derivatives. Trading of derivatives has been in itself is a big topic. So I would not cover that in real details, but derivatives is what? It does not have its value of its own, but it derives its value from some underlying other thing. Like, for example, you and me enter into a contract, and I say, I'm going to get the import of, say, rice, and I will sell it to you for 50 rupees a kg. I don't know at that time, we don't know at that time, after 6 months, what will be the price of rice. But we say we do the contract now. So that contract can be sold and bought. We are not talking about the rice itself, but we are talking about the contract that we have entered into. That we will buy and sell, and this is called a derivatives. So now there are three parts of it. Derivatives, one thing is forward contract, the example that I gave you. Then there's a futures, it's a similar to forward, and there are options. Options means buying or to have that option to buy or sell on a specific price on a future date. So this is like buying a house. We actually we give you advance to somebody, and we say, okay, I will give you the remaining money in 1 month. You keep this flat on hold for me. If I don't give my money after, if I don't come to you, you can sell it to somebody else. But you block this flat for this amount. If I get a cheaper option in that 1 month, I will not come to you and buy that. I'll go and buy some other flat. So this is a mechanism that is there in the options market. But that itself is a huge topic in itself. So I don't want to go too much into details. But that has become a very, very popular method of trading in the financial markets across the globe. Majority of the trades happen these days in the derivatives. So that is about the derivatives. So we've talked about this. Now quickly, let's just go over to the what is the now let's actually talk about the financial planning and investment education. So let's quickly understand what is the difference between savings and investment. Many times we actually take this savings and investment, use this interchangeably, right? We use it interchangeably, but it is different. Savings, we in India, we are used to savings. We always talk about savings. We have to save. We Indians are great savers of money, right? For that rainy day. But saving will still give you a very, very limited growth, because in the investment there is a growth. In the savings, there's not necessarily a growth there. Unless you invest the money somewhere in the market, you wouldn't see your money growing. And how it is that I will talk to you in a minute. In savings, it at best is a good way to keep your money aside for that emergency situation. But in order to really grow financially, or to actually make your financial plans, you have to invest somewhere in your money, in somewhere, right? So we will understand this in bit more detail as we move ahead. Now let's actually go over to three basic principles of investment. Now, as I said, in order to invest, where should I invest? What should I invest? Is always a question. First things first, you first have to know where, what is your financial goal? What are you investing for? Unless if you don't know that, then no matter how you would invest, it may not be so useful for you in investing. This investing option may not be useful. Now, why does that happen? Because then you may actually fall for any kind of a trap. How? Somebody would come to you and say, okay, no, this investment is giving, my money got doubled in last 3 months. You would just invest, and by that time, the money of the market could go down and you may lose. And then you may get panicked and you may withdraw your investments with a loss. And next day onwards, the stock market can still go up. Similarly, you would not even know when to withdraw, when to take your money out, when to not to do that, especially at the time of retirement. Of course, that retirement goal is a very, very long drawn goal for you, but maybe this could be a useful thing for your parents, right? So first you got to know, why am I investing? Right? Number one, you can have a different goals. You can actually have goals like maybe buying that mobile phone, or maybe buying a laptop, or maybe buying, maybe funding your own education. Two, maybe I want to go out on a holiday. So you could do that, and you could actually start thinking, why am I want to do I want to invest? That's one, right? Now let's, having said that, now first, so now let's understand these three principles. Safety. So it may sound as a very logical thing. Oh, so what? Yeah, of course, safety has to be there. But unfortunately, many of us, including in my experience, I've seen many people, including the tech savvy people, the all the financially savvy people, they also do this mistake, and they also fall for this trap where they don't take care of their safety. The first, so then you will say, okay, how do I ensure that this is safe? So you can actually see whether this entity is registered with SEBI or RBI or PFRD or IRDA. If this entity is registered, even if something goes wrong, you have somewhere some recourse to look at, if your money is lost, or if there's any issue with your investment. So it's very, very simple thing, but we don't do that. So always ask for the registration number of that company, or that person, and then you can cross verify it on the SEBI's website. So that's one thing of safety. Then there's a liquidity. Whether the investment that I want, the investment that I'm putting in my money in, is it liquid? Can I get my money back if I require it? Now, it is really, really very, very important, because no matter how good investment it is, but if you don't get it on time, there's no use of that investment, right? There's no use. You may actually go to some other place. You'll say, okay, in that case, you'll have to, in the case of emergency, you will either have to take a loan, which could be on a higher rate of interest. And taking that loan also is a tedious process. It will take time, it will take effort, or you have to ask for somebody. Even that may not be so easy. So you got to be able to get your money back whenever you want, right? And then the rate of return. So the simple formula is, how much should be the rate of return of my investment? So there is no clear-cut answer to that, but the basic answer to that, simple answer to that, is you should have your rate of returns at least more than the rate of inflation. Now, what is inflation? All of you know, right? I think in my times, in my law, when I did my law from Government Law College, that time there's a subject of economics. I think in my second year, first year or second year, I'm not sure, but there was this subject. So, and there's concept of inflation. So it should be at least more than the inflation, at least equal to the rate of inflation. Otherwise, you are losing on your money. So what do we do? So let's quickly understand that when we put our money in the bank account, in the savings account, is it how it is? Let's test it. One, whether it is safe. Yeah, it is relatively safe, but it's not fully safe. We have got enough examples of banks going bust. And even if it is safe to the extent of deposit insurance scheme that has been given by the RBI. Earlier it was 1 lakh, now it is 5 lakh, not more than that. So even that money is not safe. How about liquid? Yes, it is liquid. Definitely it is liquid. Probably this is one of the best liquid money that you could have. Third thing, rate of return. Whether it is giving you rate of return, good rate of return, no, this is completely not a good investment, not a good choice, because the rate of return that you get on your savings account is about 4%. And in some cases, now, I think just about a few days back, the government had indicated that they would reduce it to 3.5%. Now you tell me, when the inflation is about 5 to 6, I mean at least 6% to 6-7%, even in those Corona days, in spite of that, the inflation rate of inflation, CPI inflation index, is more than 6%, 5 to 6%. Now, when the inflation is 6%, if you put 100 rupees, the 100 rupees value, the cost of that 100 rupees has become to 105 rupees, and you are getting 104 rupees. And over the period of time, you will start to lose your money on time. And this, therefore, you got to be careful about investing in the putting your money in the savings bank. Now, quickly go over to the investment options in the capital market. Equity market, of course, equity market, we have the share market, all of us know, right? Generally, where we get the ownership of a company when we invest in the capital of in the equity market, the share market. There are two segments of that: primary market and secondary market. Primary market is what? If I have to explain in an earlier analogy, where I said the primary market is like a Amazon or a Flipkart, where you get new shares, and the secondary market is a place where you buy old shares, like OLX. Okay, so that's primary and secondary market. We can, of course, debt markets, where we have got debentures and bonds of different denominations, whether different companies, the governments, everybody else, whenever they issue kind of a loan units. So those are also traded in the market. A commodities market, of course, the commodities market in India, what we've heard is about the oil market and the gold market. Of course, now there are some other agricultural producers also are being put in the are being sold in the market, but in the commodities market online, but that is still at a very, very nascent stage, right? And of course, there's a real estate. So that is also another option that you have in the for investment. SEBI complaint redressal system. Now, what happens? No matter how careful you are in your investment, but the problem is still, in many cases, you may end up having some issues. Some company may not respond to you. There could be some issue, something or the other. So therefore, SEBI has come up with a platform called Scores, scores.gov.in. This platform, what it does, you can actually open your account on this platform, and you can lodge your complaint online. Now, in many cases, you may have this issue. Okay, this is a government sector. I don't know what is going to happen of my complaint. 6 months, I'll have to wait. But here, the great thing about it, you can do everything online, or paperless system from your home, and you can, in real time, you can track here the status of your complaint. In case you are not satisfied with the redressal of your complaint, you can file an appeal online there itself. So that option is also open for you, available, right? So this option is a very, very important function that SEBI does. In fact, after that, recently IRDA also has come up with the integrated complaint redressal system, right? So SEBI has this Scores platform where you can get your issues redressed. So now let's quickly understand what is the role of lawyers and what are the opportunities for lawyers in the securities market. Lawyers, in my opinion, have opportunities in any sector of the economy, any and all sectors of the economy, especially in the securities market, because even now, even after those 30 years of SEBI's establishment, this field is the securities law field is relatively still untouched. There are not many people really who are practicing in the in this side, right? So there are enough opportunities in terms of practice, in terms of actually having a litigation practice. There, of course, you can. There are a number of hearings keep happening with SEBI, with Securities Appellate Tribunal, which is appellate body, and of course, there are many cases go all the way up to Supreme Court. So there are enough opportunities in that. There is a opportunity for lawyers to do a lot of due diligence work. Now, there are thousands and thousands of entities, intermediaries that are being governed by SEBI. And there, I have seen many, there are many occasions where a lot of companies want to keep doing the due diligence work for them for different purposes. And then there is an opportunity for lawyers to do the advisory, because the financial stakes are too high. The stakes are too high. A lot of companies want to have their firsthand want to know the repercussions, if any, of their actions or not taking action. And there is a huge opportunity in terms of the advisory services for lawyers. And again, in all these spheres, not many lawyers I see are available still. To put this in a perspective, in countries like US, where the markets are much more developed than Indian markets are, the entire securities market is dominated by lawyers. And I would say that even now, there's hardly there's a small chunk of lawyers who are practicing, who are in this securities law side. Many of us even may not be aware of so many opportunities that are there in this side, considering I'm not sure whether we have now or not, but in my time there was no specialization subject also in the capital market side, so you couldn't even get a sense of that. Therefore, my request to all of you, I have two requests finally. Number one, definitely explore the opportunities in the capital markets and securities law side for yourselves, because there's enough for everyone here. That's one. Number two is, as I said, no matter how much knowledge we take, it is extremely important that you put your head in that. It's like, unless you jump in the water, no matter how many books you have read on swimming, basics of swimming, you wouldn't understand a thing unless you actually jump in the water and start swimming. So my request to all of you is explore that, and also consider investing in the market, maybe with the 500 rupees, maybe 1,000 rupees, I don't know. But do that, because then only you will get a real sense how it is, what are the opportunities, what are the different things. And you will start making sense of what are the different things in the market that you should be aware of, and so on and so forth. Right? So start investing, start small. Maybe you can start with a mutual fund and really get the first-hand taste of the securities market. So with that, I will stop here. Of course, if you have anything, if you want to connect with me, you can either connect with me on my LinkedIn or on this email ID. This has been given. And Thank you so much for inviting me here. I know it has been a long session, approximately, I think about a little less than 2 hours. I hope this has been useful for you. And if there are any questions, I would be glad to take it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think we do have a few questions. If anyone has a question, they can drop it in the chat box, or if you want, you could even unmute yourself and ask the question. So we have a question by Aman. He asks, if cryptocurrency gets regulated by the government and is treated as an asset class, will it be regulated by SEBI, like FINMA in Switzerland, or RBI, or a separate authority?
Whatever little I know about this so far, it will be regulated by SEBI and RBI both. Some aspects, maybe the issuance of crypto, if they are regulated, if they are legalized, then issuance of the crypto would be regulated by RBI, and the trading and dealing in the crypto would be regulated by SEBI. That is what is the limited understanding we have so far. Of course, there are, again, it's a very wide topic, and there are a lot of ifs and buts there. But of course, internally with SEBI, we are talking about it, because that's the next big thing coming up. So yes.
We have another question from Daniel. He asks, does doing CA or CFA help in a career in the securities market?
Oh, definitely it does help. It definitely does help. See, Daniel, it will definitely help you, because there are many aspects of the trading and of the securities market which is to do with the numbers, and it is, many things are there in terms of finance. So if you do CA, definitely you would be able to have a better understanding of the lot of financial concepts that you may have, and it will definitely add to your credibility in the market when you start practicing.
The next question is from Dhruv. He asks, what is the procedure to apply for an internship at SEBI?
There has been since last year we have started a monthly internship program with SEBI. Earlier it was an in-person internship. Now it is online internship only. You can go on SEBI's website, and that we open the internship opportunities from time to time. Now I'm not sure whether it is available for lawyers, law students. But last year we had kept it open for some few months, and you could apply on that, keeping your I think either your principal or course coordinator or somebody in a loop, and then of course SEBI would, if you are shortlisted, you could do a 1-month internship with SEBI. This is after the pandemic time. We have kept it online. Everything is online. So even now it is all online. I don't think in a very near future it will become offline, in-person internship. But nevertheless, it's a very good option. You will get to learn a lot of things. You can definitely keep checking it on the SEBI website.
We have another question on cryptocurrency from Alpesh. He asks, would rules be released by SEBI for regulation, or would we need legislation from Parliament?
No, I think we would require legislation from the Parliament first, because because it's an entirely a new concept, and I'm presuming that we will have a legislation first, and then the rules and regulations would be accordingly made. And because we right now officially we even don't know who would be the regulating entity, uh, you know, who would take care of the this crypto side, cryptocurrency. So still there are a lot of gray areas there. So um, I'm thinking that very soon the a bill will be introduced in the parliament, and after that the whole process will start.
We have this would be our final question that we're taking. This is from Abhigyan. He's asking, broadly, what issues does the legal department at SEBI deal with?
Now that's a very wide question. I mean, what do I tell you? I mean, there are whether it's a making of policy, making regulations, vetting of different policies that SEBI or even the different ministries that may ask SEBI's opinion on, internal opinion. Then there is an informal guidance scheme that SEBI has. Um, Also, issuance of show cause notices, um, drafting of orders, and there are so many other things that the legal department in SEBI is actually doing. I may be missing out on so many other things, but that's something that is coming on top of my mind. So I just share that.
Mr. Kelapure, thank you so much for joining us here today. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, and I hope all of you got benefited out of this session today. Thank you so much.
Sir. Thank you so much. I'd like to take this time to thank our junior core and our professor in charge, Ms. Masani, for giving us support when we needed it. And thank you to everyone joining us here today. Thank you so much.